Not really sure what to make of it. There was some news yesterday from Kombat, which is in general a very reliable media outlet. I have gone to their coverage when they've broken news consistently. In fact, this is the only time I can remember where they reported something and then it was challenged thereafter, but it's not really clear if that challenge is factual either. Here's the story. Kombat reported that Khamzat Chimaev had his Russian passport seized, that he is obviously from native Chechnya, is now a resident of Sweden, and flew to Russia to visit family, potentially some other stuff as well, business, whatever, and then had his Russian passport seized by Russian authorities in St. Petersburg, and that the report was it was related to the effort of mobilization that the country has undertaken in Russia to combat Ukraine's advances on the battlefield. Now, subsequent to that, Brett Okamoto of ESPN said he spoke to Khamzat Chimaev's manager, and I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce his name, Majdi Shamas, who told Okamoto that Khamzat being stuck in Russia with a revoked passport is not true, that he is in Russia. In fact, we did see him on an ACA card yesterday, but there are, quote, no problems with any travel restrictions, according to him. BC, are you buying or selling that Khamzat is stuck in Russia?
I'm going to buy it, Luke. Do I have that deep information to prove it? No, I don't think any of us do, as we're being very speculative based on the reports we've seen. But Luke, what do we know to be a fact? That Khamzat is a favored son of certain Russian political powers, particularly within Chechnya.
Powers. Let's call them what they are, murderous dictators. That's what they are.
Ramzan Kadyrov is who we're talking about at the moment, Luke. When the news originally broke, I thought it was more of a Tyson Fury can't come to the States because of Daniel Kinahan thing, but it seemed the narrative was more, is he getting drafted into the war here? Well, here's the deal, Luke. We know of their relationship. We also know of that very weird reality that took place during the pandemic when Khamzat had back-to-back COVID positive tests and very rough battles, according to reports, and openly considered retirement, only for Kadyrov to go public and be like, nah, brah, that ain't happening. You'll be just fine. And, you'll go out there and represent our flag and fight. So, Luke, if I'm going to believe the things associated with that fact that we've seen in the past, that it feels like it's a fighter who is in some regard controlled by a higher power entity or financially backed, or at the very least, there's a lot of pressure on Chimaev to live up to whatever expectations or standards are being put on him politically within that relationship. Could I also believe that could also play into them going, nah, we need you on the front lines of this war to do exactly what we're trying to do here? Yeah, I could believe that without having the facts to prove it, Luke. So I can hear everyone say, no, it's fine. He was just here. Yeah, he's still there, by the way. Okay. So until I see him fly out and we talk about his next fight, I'm going to hold back feelings here of I kind of believe this to be true here. Let's see what the next step is.
Well, interestingly, what Kombat also reported was that Chimaev was scheduled to be in Brazil, I think next week, or roughly in that time frame, to see a documentary about a famous jiu-jitsu player named Terere. Well, obviously, the fact that he may or may not show up if he shows up, obviously it's not true, but the fact that if he doesn't show up, that doesn't automatically prove it either. But I guess we will see. Here's the thing. I in no way want to impugn the character of his manager. I don't know his manager. I have no idea if he's telling the truth or not. He very well could be. My only caution is a general statement to the audience, which is this manager notwithstanding, because again, I don't have any information to challenge this in any way, but I just want to point out, I have lived through this world quite a long time. MMA managers in general will absolutely lie to the media for any kind of reason that they feel necessary. That's
crazy, Luke, because MMA promoters do the same thing all the time, right? That's wild.
So all I'm saying is he could very well be telling the truth, but until we get more information, I would not necessarily assume that just because any fighter's manager says it's not true, that therefore it's not true. To me, that would be interesting, and I think enough of a declaration that we have to at least heed it to a degree, but we don't have to defer to it as biblically true. I guess we have to wait until we have further confirmation one way or the other. The one thing I would say is if they do keep him, I mean, here's the thing. There have been reports of smaller named Russian fighters who have been pulled into this conflict, some of which have answered the call, some of which have fled the country. No one really at that UFC level, right? No one at that Makhachev level, no one at that, pick your fighter from that area who is in that same military age demographic None of them have been called up, and I certainly hope that they don't have to.
Yeah, I
do
follow
wonder
Liana Jojua, Luke, on Instagram. She has not been called yet.
Right, fair enough. My only concern would be that if this thing drags on, what effect it could have. Obviously, the most important significance is a war, but I mean, to the extent that it affects elite level fighters whose careers could be interrupted by this conflict, I certainly hope that's not the case. But one wonders if it might spill over into this world in a real and serious way, even beyond this current controversy, such that it exists.
Yeah, Luke, let's talk Chimaev on more of a macro level here. I don't know what's going to happen based on this report, based on whether he's headed next to fighting Paulo Costa middleweight, rather than coming back and proving that he can make welterweight and get back into that title picture. But it does feel like that Friday, the day before he was scheduled to fight Nate Diaz, he was on top of the world, being given the ultimate showcase opportunity against the fading legend on the way out that would have groomed him for crossover superstardom and an immediate title shot against the winner of Edwards and Usman if they do that trilogy. And now, after missing weight by so many pounds and having that sort of the weird way it played out with his demeanor on the microphone being so dismissive, now this report, you do have to wonder if we're in the midst of a sort of monumental turn of events in the direction his career appeared to be heading. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe he gets back there and, within 6 months proves to us he can make 170 and gets a title shot. Or maybe not, Luke. Maybe this is the turning point on somebody that looked like the kind of can't miss. I mean, I know we're talking about Bo Nickel of high regard now, of course, and Pico had a huge rise. Even John Jones, to a certain degree, was labeled so early as, God, you're looking at a future champion, in bloom here. Are you worried that, he may never return to that, where he was just, an hour before stepping on that scale to face Nate?
I will tell you, it's a great question, and I will tell you the direct answer to your question is I don't know, but I will tell you, aligned with that, a thought I did have, which is that sometimes, I've been around covering MMA for quite some time, and some guys have, most guys don't have very long careers. Most are in and out pretty quickly. But sometimes guys have a surprisingly long career, like someone like Clay Guida still being around is pretty impressive, that he can be this senior into his career, still, somewhat relevant and doing pretty interesting things, and that's very commendable. But some guys are just, it's like Brock Lesnar. He had the UFC 200 thing, but really he had that short burst of whatever. Here is my hunch, and I don't know which way it's going to go. I just don't feel like Khamzat's career is built for the long haul. Like, one way or the other, the craziness and unusual circumstances surrounding him make me feel like I don't think it's coming to an impending crash or something. That's not what I'm saying. But if you had to ask me, am I going to be covering, if I'm covering fights at all in 15 years, let's assume whoever is sort of standard MMA media in 15 years, or even 10, in 10 years, are we really going to be covering Khamzat Chimaev's fights? I'm skeptical of that, to be candid with you. Is that a fair suspicion on my part, BC?
I don't know what to expect here, Luke. This is a weird situation, all things considered. Everything that's happened to Khamzat of late. I mean, even if you go back to, look, I'm not going to hide it here. What happened during the pandemic with him, almost retiring and then you ain't retiring? That's weird as shit, Luke. That's unresolved in my eyes in terms of how that affects him as a fighter. I think all that did play into what happened with this weight situation. I don't really tend to believe that there was some backroom hey, let's not fuck over Nate this bad. Hey, Khamzat, you're just going to go, fake a weight miss. No, they didn't do that. But something weird has been going on, Luke. Is it the pressures of living up to this as being, tabbed the next big thing and potentially having the weight of Chechnya behind him and all that comes with being a favored son in that area with that type of leader? I don't know, Luke, but it is a story to watch very closely in terms of how long this could keep him out, what direction he's going personally and inside the cage. It's bizarre, but Luke, that's combat sports. I mean, are you ever surprised by this absolute daily barrage of bullshit that we weed through trying to find the corn within the fecal matter? This is combat sports, Luke. At the end of the day, you get used to the smell, right?
I think that's true, and I just think if you're going to work in this industry or even just be around it as a fan for a long period of time, you really come away with the conclusion that you just can't ever expect sustain normalcy. It doesn't work for whatever reason. You've got crazy people doing a crazy sport,